Welcome traders to our midweek technical analysis video. So jumping straight into things here from where we last left off, which will be this area here. So we spoke about these areas that we established using our fixed range volume profile. We understood that this area was the POC or point of control. This was our value area high and this was our value area low. So the interesting thing is we saw price break just below this on the lower time frames. And as the market opened up, we saw a push down to this level, which is one of our psychological point of interest that we had marked in prior to establishing these new levels from our fixed range volume profile. And then from there, you can see that price did, in fact, test this level a couple times before we saw that break of structure. Price sweeping liquidity that was resting below this low here and ended up breaking through. You can see that we had that initial break and then price came back up to test it. So we had a nice sort of break and retest pattern. So obviously we had our break. If I go ahead and change the color, and then we had our retest. So just quite a nice trading opportunity there, and obviously we broke through this point of interest here, swept liquidity, and broke past the value area low. So a really good trading opportunity right there. Carrying on, then price continued to drop again. Another ended up finding support the same way as we saw here at one of our points of interest at 3,975. So obviously now that break there, the reason why it was so significant, especially through this point of interest, was because it's that 4,000 level, and obviously the 4,000 level becomes that psychological level that traders are going to take into account and say, okay, gold is below 4,000. As you can see, we saw the same thing again. We saw, obviously, as you can see here, we saw price test as support on one of our points of interest. We saw our break, we saw liquidity been swept, and then we saw that POC broken through as well, and price continued on bearish. You can see the same sort of thing that happened here. We came down to that original point of interest. Price came down to test it a couple of times, and then we tested as a resistance on this level. So again, we had our break. Do that a little bit neater. We had our break, and then we had our retest, and then a secondary retest before price then continued on bearish, breaking through this low here and breaking through this point of interest that we have marked in at around 3,975, sweeping this low resting liquidity here and pushing all the way down, finding support at one of our points of interests at 3,895. From there then, throughout the London session and New York session, you saw bullish momentum carrying price higher and higher, creating higher highs and higher lows. We saw a break of this level here and a retest pattern, and then throughout today, sort of in the build up to the London session open, we've seen bullish volume, and then sort of since the London session has opened, and now we are inside the first sort of 15 minutes or so of the New York session, you can see that price is starting to find some sort of resistance at around this level, because you can see that the candlesticks are losing their volume, indicated by this sort of small chunk here, and then you can also see this bearish engulfing pattern here. So you have your one candlestick, your two candlestick, and then obviously your entry candlestick. So you'd sort of be looking to take short positions on this level, set it above the high, and then target wherever you feel is necessary. But that's what we're currently looking at right now. So overall, this week thus far, gold has been bearish, with the original market open being this candlestick. Bear with me. This candlestick here. So we dropped down, tested, dropped down again, tested, dropped down again, and then we found this like sort of final level of what we can now understand as a solid support before price then pushed up, creating higher highs and higher lows, and now price is testing just above one of our points of interest at 4,004. So with that being said, what could we potentially expect for the rest of this week? Obviously we have this point of control here. We will drag that across. I will thin out these lines just so they're not in the way too much. And what I'll go ahead and do actually is I'll mark these in green, just so we know that that's something to do with the fixed range volume profile. So but what we'll go ahead and do is we'll just see sort of how price is reacting and why price is reacting the way it is, by grabbing our fixed range volume profile, and we will do this from the start of the week up until where we are now. So Our value area high is more or less in the same area as this value area low. Our value area low is on one of our points of interest, and then our point of control at the moment is within this level here, which is self-explanatory. You can see that this was sort of that final push. You saw that final level of support found, and then price pushed up, and you can see through the volume of these candlesticks, you can see that buyers and sellers are entering the markets within trades. What we can do, just for sort of good use, we can just mark that in there and establish this as one of our points of control. We can take this into account in a later date if necessary. So sort of a secondary level if price is to come down from here before we test this support area again. It could be a level that we see price return to and then reject off of. But going with what we can currently see within the market, we can see some sort of bearish setup taking place over here. The reason I say that is, again, like I said, the volume of these candlesticks you can see is closing down. And then obviously now we are testing as somewhat of a support. So what we're going to be looking for throughout today and for the rest of the week, we're going to be looking for one of two moves. So we could potentially see price break down and find support at any of these levels. It could be at this level here, which is a previous high and previous support, so resistance, support and resistance. We could see price reject off of that level. However, it does make sense for price to push up to last week's point of control. So I think that is probably the most probable scenario for gold at the moment. However, it just sort of depends on this point of interest here. If we see price break through this level, we're going to be targeting our point of interest here. If price breaks below that, we're going to be looking at our most recent point of control. Price breaks that, going to be looking at our point of interest, and then so on and so forth. But if price is to push down, it will be this level that we're looking at as the sort of last level. Price could sweep this liquidity that's resting below this low here and then continue up, but there is definitely some possibility for price to continue from this level. So yeah, there's a couple of things that you could see happen. It sort of just depends on this level here of around 4,000. If 4,000 is broken below, we're probably going to see a continuation of this bearish momentum. Perhaps see price come down to these areas here. If we see price pull itself back up into this range, so this consolidation range that we established last week, on the back end of last week, if it comes back into this range, we could expect price to continue to fluctuate before we see a break of these highs here, continuing on price in that overall bullish fashion that we've seen for the last however long. So as it goes for our midweek technical analysis, that's pretty much it. Again, concluding it, this week's been bearish so far. We have seen a bullish push since sort of London session on Tuesday. Nothing too significant to sort of open our eyes really, but we're just going to be looking at the level of 4,000 as sort of anything trading above 4,000. We're going to assume that price is going to continue on bullish. Anything trading below 4,000, we're going to assume that price is going to continue bearish. So pretty simple this week, and obviously we'll chat back in on our post-week market review. But as always, I hope you've all enjoyed this midweek technical analysis. Keeping it short and sweet. Don't want to talk about too much. Obviously, our post-week, we go over everything and anything. So there'll be a lot more detail in there, but I feel like we've covered everything that we need to for our midweek. So again, I hope you've all enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you in our post-week market review. Peace.